There is something that I find super interesting in the elementary STEM space. Oftentimes, we are given these amazing spaces and we are tasked to do amazing and innovative things with our students, but we are given zero curriculum and zero budget to do so. And don't get me wrong, you can do a lot of awesome stuff with recyclable materials, but you definitely want to level up when it comes to those amazing resources that we want our kids to get their hands on. And I know that you are feeling it too. A little while back, over 70 of you filled out my podcast survey, and thank you so much for doing that. I got a lot of great insight as to what you're feeling right now and what you're needing, and to help me plan future episodes just like this one. And there was a common theme when it comes to gathering materials in your space and how this is definitely a struggle for you. Some of you even said that there is an issue with the budget, gathering materials, planning activities that won't break the bank, and very little resources and materials. I completely understand, and that's why you are definitely going to love today's expert, Jennifer Mahin. We have been chatting over the years over on Instagram, and I noticed that she was getting a lot of awesome supplies through grant writing. In fact, over the years, she has gotten funded over $32,000 worth of supplies in combined grant writing to build up the space for her students. Yes, you heard that right. $32,000. Not all at once, but just a bunch over time. She was a lot like you. She was given a brand new classroom with zero curriculum and zero tools to do these amazing things in STEM. So she took upon herself all of this awesome grant writing. Jennifer Mahin is a K 5 STEM teacher and technology integration specialist at East Elementary School in Kansas. Jennifer is an MIE expert, a flip trainer, a Pear Deck coach, and an Ozobot certified educator. Jennifer is also a blogger who is passionate about rural education and the importance of STEM and computer science in the K 5 classroom. We're going to get a lot of information in this episode when it comes to gathering materials for your space and some tips and tricks when it comes to grant writing. I hope after today's episode that you feel inspired and that you can start writing grants for your space so that you can gather those awesome supplies that you know that you want your students to get their hands on and really have them be a 22nd century learner. Can't wait for you to listen. All right. Well, thank you, Jennifer, for being here today for round two. We've already did this before and it was so good. And then your recording wasn't even there when I looked for it. I was going to make a video and then nothing was there. So I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this again because what we're going to be talking about today is definitely like a huge question that I know I get asked and I know you get asked all the time. And so that's why I wanted you as a guest to talk about supplies and grant writing. But before we get into that, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, your teaching background, and then how you stepped into your role as a STEM teacher.
Perfect. Hello, my name is Jennifer Mahin. You can find me on social media at Jennisaurus Tech. I'm a K through 5 STEM teacher and technology integration specialist at East Elementary School in Belleville, Kansas. I am in a rural area, very small area. I'm in my 10th year of education. I started out doing 3 years. Well, first off, I did 2 years of very severe and profound special education, 6th through 9th grade. And then I moved to Kansas, rural Kansas, and started here as a 2nd through 5th grade special ed teacher. Realized that I needed something more challenging and switched to 5th grade math and social studies for 3 years. And during all that time, I was going to like tech conferences and things like that and realized I wanted to get my master's in instructional technology. And that's really how I stumbled into the position now, because our superintendent at the time wanted a STEM program and I wanted a tech integration job. So we kind of formed the two. Like I had no interest in STEM. I mean, I did in a sense, but didn't realize it. Like 5th grade math and social studies is not fun. So I started integrating coding into my 5th grade math lessons. Like we started with JavaScript coding, which I didn't realize how hard JavaScript coding was.
Yeah, it's super hard.
But we did it because it fit in with our like shapes and different angles and things like that. And then I switched to like just, basic code.org coding a little bit with them. And then we turned our social studies lessons into STEM challenges to kind of make it more hands-on and fun and really create an experience, which all led into me being the K-5 STEM teacher now. And I'm in my 4th year of teaching STEM here.
Awesome. I feel like our stories are really similar. And I think you and I've talked about it over the years. Like I was in the classroom before, which is so cool. You have a background, by the way, in special education because I feel like every teacher needs that, honestly, as a background, just with students in general and just learning more about them. So, yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from because I was doing that kind of stuff with my classes and when I taught 3rd grade. And all those conferences are just so invigorating and exciting. You're like, I want to do more of this. So it's so awesome how you're in this STEM role now. And so you had to create this. So it wasn't something that already existed. So what was your room like when, in terms of materials and everything, like what was it like? Because you had like a new role.
So when I was getting into this program, at the end of that school year, I kind of had an idea that we were building this role, but we weren't for sure. And at the time, we had a keyboarding class. The kids went and did keyboarding, I think like twice a week. So our district decided that that's kind of, we were moving away from that role and wanted to do this STEM tech integration kind of role. So I had nothing. The kids had no knowledge of STEM,
Yeah.
but I mean, like, there was nothing for this program at all. I think I got a stapler and some dividers.
Oh,
Like
perfect. Yeah.
maybe even keyboard covers, like so you couldn't look at
Ooh.
your look at the keys. But I knew I wanted to take this role. And I knew that in, a small rural school, you don't have funding. So as a 5th grade teacher, I applied for this grant through a local foundation, just so that I was like, well, if I get this job, I need something. So I wrote a grant for like 50, it was either 5,500 or 5,000. I think it was 5,000.
Oh, wow.
Um, in May. So still a 5th grade teacher at the time. And I was like, well, here's the thing. If I get it, I get it. And I can use this money for my new job. And if not, I'm going to be a really cool 5th grade teacher with all of these robots and all of these new building supplies. So I was kind of just like, well, let's see if I can do this and hope for the best. And luckily I got the position so I could kind of transfer that stuff to my new role.
So you basically were manifesting your role.
Pretty much. I was hoping it worked out and thank goodness it did.
And then it did. That's so cool. How did you find out about the grant? Because I know I haven't ever done any local grants. I know that they're out there. My district does a grant opportunity that I do every year. But how did you even find out about that? Because I know Donors Choose is a popular one, which we'll talk more about the grant success you've had. But how did you find out about this local one and like other ones you've done before?
So I got kind of lucky in the sense that my husband at the time was working for economic development.
Oh,
And he was in charge of like helping with different grants and things like that. So he was pretty knowledgeable of what local grants were out there. But we actually have like 3 really, really good local grants that want to support our schools. So like I went to the office the other day and there's this paper for the Republic County Community Foundation. Like, here's the deadline, sign up for it.
cool.
But we get kind of emails maybe like twice a year for local grants. So I know there's 2 different ones that come out twice a year. And then there's one that's every single month. So most communities have local
Mm.
foundations, local grants that want to support schools. So what I would say is if you have an economic developer, like reach out to that person because they're super knowledgeable. And most times they'll even help you like figure out where to start.
Mm.
And if not, like a simple Google, like my sister's an educator. So I Googled for in her area, like she's in Western Nebraska. So I Googled in that area, what grants are available. And you can find like they have this portion for education, this portion for this. So there's a lot of local support for school districts.
I think that's really helpful to know because I think sometimes we hear about these grants that are like for the whole United States, which I feel like could be really, really competitive, which still
Mhm.
apply for them. But that's
Yes.
really good. Just even a Google search and the way that you search that can be really helpful because you won't have as much competition and they might be more familiar with your community and what you
Mhm.
need. Did that, based on where you're at, so you said you're in a rural,
Mhm.
I can't say that word, rural.
Rural.
Oh my gosh, I'm not great with my R's. But did that impact what you started ordering? Because you had nothing, but were you looking for specific things when you were writing grants and building up your program for your kids?
Well, I'm gonna hit back on what you just said
Oh,
really quick
yeah.
though. So like when I first wrote my first two grants, my first one was $5,000. That was from a local one. They gave it to me right away. My next one I did was $5,500. Gave it to me in August because I started with 5,000, thought I could do, you know, reach so far, and
Yeah.
5,000 got me nowhere.
Yeah,
So I
right.
got 5,500 more, and then I was like, I could use a little more. So I wrote another one, and then they turned me down. And I'm
Oh,
like,
no.
I was like, excuse me.
Me? I got turned
It's
down?
like you're not gonna fund me. So that was interesting. And then I started seeing national like STEM grants. I think it was through like the Bayer Fund does
Mm.
a lot of national STEM grants. So I applied, and this one was like $20,000.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm like, yes, I'm gonna get this. And I was selected to be in the finalists where they only selected like 10 schools or something. And of course I didn't get it. I mean, but I was like on such a high of getting all these grants to then not get two. I really had to stop and be like, hmm, what now? Like, why am I not getting these? So, what I did then is I had to really think, like, what makes me stand out? And I think that's the hardest part
Mm.
for teachers writing those grants is like, what do I need to say to make sure I'm getting that funding? And for me, being in rural Kansas, I knew as a fifth grade teacher, my field trip, we drove to Manhattan, Kansas, 2 hours away, and we went on a STEM field trip. So we
Oh,
were
cool.
paying to go on a STEM field trip, 2 hours away, building a wind turbine. It was a cool field trip, but I'm like, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
So that's when I was like, you know, in rural Kansas, I want my kids to realize that, there's a place for them here. I want them
Mhm.
to realize that just because we're, rural doesn't mean we can't compete with bigger school districts. Bigger schools were having robotics teams and we didn't. So for me, it was identifying that need of, I don't want my students to be held back by their location. I really
Mm.
want them to be able to compete with these bigger districts, to be able to do these things. And that's really kind of what helped our grants then stand out from there on out. And another place to look for grants, like when I wanted 3D printers, like there was a grant through the 3D printing company that
Oh,
I could apply for. And some of these robotics, like Hess trucks, I don't know if you're familiar with those.
no.
I just saw like a Hess truck fun grant around Christmas. So I applied for it. And now I'm the proud owner of like $1,200 worth of Hess trucks that
Oh,
beep noise.
cool. That's so
But it's
fun.
awesome because like you don't realize these things are out there until you really start looking. Um,
Mhm.
but back to your question.
No, it
So
all goes together.
I guess what I really looked for in the beginning was I saw, I saw teachers on Instagram, like big name teachers posting these things that looked so amazing. And I'm like, I need that. So I just ordered it all. And
Yep.
I learned very fast that what works for somebody else might not work for me. And and even sometimes what people are posting are sponsored. So do your own research
Mhm.
and make sure you like it, because I ordered like these Jimmy robots that were really neat, but they didn't have student accounts at the time. It might have
Oh.
changed now, but I'm like, how do we do this then? Or I ordered like Lego Boost robots, which are more of like an at-home robot,
Oh, that makes sense.
and not the Lego education kits. So like if you're gonna
Mhm.
order Lego education, get the kits. They're
Yep.
amazing, but don't order the at-home robots. So it's
Mhm.
a lot of trial and error. Now I know what not to get, what to get. I say definitely get things that have a great replacement part,
Yep.
like Osmo, snap circuits. Man, you lose or break a piece, you can get another one shipped right to you. Some of the Lego education kits come with like a replacement
Yep.
bag piece. Love that.
I know. I love that
Um,
too. It's so nice. I'm like, ooh, I get all these extras.
yeah, my
Perfect.
first Lego We Do kits didn't come with those.
I know.
And then my Brick Q Motion and my Spike Prime came with those. So I'm
Yes.
like, hey, can I get like a refund for the missing pieces?
I know, because I'm like, oh, these are all the ones that would go missing slash in kids' pockets.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think we had this conversation before. It was
I
like
think
the little
so.
piece that looks like the snowboard or the
Yes.
skateboard. We're like, where do you
Hmm.
get this? And then I'm spending 25 cents and $8 in shipping to get the most random piece shipped to my house in a month.
And I'm like, oh, well, they're like, my minifig doesn't have a skateboard. I'm like, too bad.
Yeah.
Be creative, make a new one.
And then check your pockets.
Yeah, check your pockets. Yeah, that one always somehow it was found in the hallway.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
So with
STEM
your
problems.
grants, okay, so your first two were funded. So over the years, about how much do you think you've gotten funded in grants to help supply your classroom?
Probably between For my classroom, it's probably around 25,000. And then I helped our sixth grade class try to get up and running. So I'm probably well over
Oh my
$33,000.
gosh, that
Um,
is so amazing.
but I was able to start our STEM program. We're in year 4 of it. We're in year 2 of a makerspace classroom. And what's great about both of these is that I have like completely different robots
Hmm.
and building materials than the makerspace does. Like up here, I have a ton of Lego education stuff. I have like Dash and Dot. I have Ozobots, the robot mouse, the critter
Oh
robots, which
yeah.
aren't my favorite,
Oh
but
yeah. Yeah. Coding a mouse too, I feel like it doesn't last very long
so
either.
I've had success with those.
Have
I've heard from
you?
a lot of people that they don't love them. And one thing I don't love is the amount of batteries. Like when you go to
Yeah.
order something, don't get something with a ton of batteries.
Hmm.
But for some reason, like mine are going on year 4 and they are thriving. Knock
What?
on wood, they're thriving.
Oh, that's good. I tried and the wheels were messed up. I'm just investing in B-bots because
Yes. See,
those
my
are fine.
makerspace has Bebots like
Okay.
Spiros. They have Botley. We have like Makey Makey down there. And then I have snap circuits up here, but I have different snap circuits down there. And then that's just like jam packed with like recycled materials, building
Cool.
materials. It's everything so that a teacher can go down there and start integrating STEM into what they're teaching, but they don't have to bring anything. Like the
Yeah, that's
lessons are
so
there, the
nice.
materials are there. And then we can open that up to like surrounding communities, surrounding schools, because we're all rural, we're all
Mhm.
small. And like, let's just grow together.
Oh, that's really good too when you're thinking about your impact. A lot of times those questions on grants are what are your impact? And so
Yes.
not only are you impacting kids in your school, but like the surrounding communities. And so you have a lot more longevity in the product, which those grant readers really want to see is like what impact are you going to have? That's really cool.
And I also I said also funny. And I also always said, we have local manufacturers that have like STEM based things. So I was also, willing to bring in local manufacturers to talk to
Hmm.
students. I was also like willing to reach out to local businesses and get their support to show that, hey, the community is helping us. Our school's giving a little bit of funding,
Yeah.
and then I'm trying to make this work and really show students that what we're learning here can be used in our community. And once you show that your need for it and
Yeah.
why you need it, I mean, you're going to get the money every time,
Hmm.
but your
And
need is so important.
yes, you have to make it very, very specific. And I feel like the way I've had to write grants is you're writing it to people who aren't teachers oftentimes because us as teachers, we know like, oh yeah, we know how this is going to connect. We know in our heads, but
Mhm.
someone who's not a teacher doesn't understand. You have to be very, very specific and be very clear how it's going to be used because it's not really an assumption to people outside of education. So I'm sure you've had
So
to be
true.
very detailed
Yeah.
to
Like
write all these.
like when I'm asking for different Legos and trying to show them like the importance and values of Legos, because just so many people like it's just toys. We're
Hmm.
just playing, and to show like, no, here's the connections. Here's how I'm crossing, different standards and really fostering growth. It's definitely important to show them like we need this and here's why.
Oh, absolutely. Do you feel like too with because you had to build up everything, like you had nothing. So you got a lot of grants at the beginning. And then as your kids have experienced your class, do you feel like it's really changed what you're ordering, like based on what kids know? Like, do you feel like their skill level has changed over the years and what materials you need for different grade levels?
Yeah, so back in the beginning, my very first year, whatever I used with one grade, I could almost do with everyone because it was new to everyone. And now it's like, I just got the Lego spike kits and I love them. And I
Mhm.
love that it's broken down with different activities per
It's
grade
so
level because
good.
that's so important.
It's
I want to
so
be able to
good.
use, yeah, I want to be able to use the same kit with everybody. And that's one that I can. And there's different lessons and it's fun. But I'm definitely having to find things now that are harder. Um, and like I love Dash and Dot,
Hmm.
but I don't want to pay for your Wonder Workshop curriculum to save their progress. So it's hard, I guess, finding things not only that are great, but that I don't also have to have an added expense every year. Like we did Bloxels. I'm not sure if you ever use those.
Yes, I've used the boards, but don't you have to pay for the subscription every year?
Yes. So
Yeah.
we got the boards, came with the subscription. Great. Love the subscription in the app. But now I'm like, my subscription's up.
Yeah, I
Now
know.
what?
Yeah, and you have to it's kind of expensive, I've heard.
Yeah, so that's the hard part is like maintaining now. And even still adding, like I do a little bit of a donors choose, do a little bit of a local one, but I feel like to keep this growing, to keep challenging kids, like I'm gonna have to keep writing those grants and
Mhm.
advocating for what those students need.
Oh, absolutely. Do you save all of this too, like on the side? Do you
Yeah,
just save like a Google Doc and everything?
yes. So the very first like two or three I didn't, and now everything's saved on in my drive,
Mhm.
because I do a lot of conferences, I do a lot of presenting, and that's my biggest question. Um, Actually, one of the Kansas Department of Ed for computer science person sends people to me all the time. Like when they email him about grants, he refers them to me. And then somehow they come in on a tour. Like I'm giving
Oh,
tours of our school in Makerspace constantly. And I'm constantly like sending people information of here's what I've done to get grants. Here's how to kind of word them. If you need help, let me know. But this is what I did, but it's not going to work for you.
yeah.
So now I've done so many that I can kind of copy and paste and reword them. And in the beginning, it's we're trying to develop this program, and now it's I'm trying to push students and keep, you know, challenging them.
Oh, yeah. And that's a
It's
good
so hard.
teacher. Yeah,
It's
it is
good, but it's
hard.
it's hard to like, figure out, okay, well, what do I need next? And
Mhm.
and realizing what actually works and what just looks good.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Like we were we were talking on Instagram. You posted the xylophones for Dash and
Yes.
Dot, and I love Dash and Dot so much. I I think I'm more sensitive to sound than I thought, and I think you might be too. You're like, oh, the xylophones. Might not recommend those to
No,
people.
they came with the kit I got back in
Oh,
the
yeah.
day. And it was part of our robotic stations I was doing in fourth grade yesterday. And they put this xylophone on Dash, and it's like slamming onto the keyboard. And then someone reached out to me on Instagram and was like, hey, I actually partnered with my music teacher and she taught him the notes.
Oh,
And I was like, that's a great idea. But
cool.
I didn't do that.
Yeah, I didn't either. And I wish I did at the time I was co-teaching. And then
Yes,
I was like, this is why I'm not a music teacher.
it
Like,
was terrible.
this is actually why. Like, can you imagine? It's like the xylophones are like the recorders of music class. Like
Yes.
that same sound. I'm like, "Ugh," I have all a bunch of those too. Love me some Dash, but the xylophones I'm very sensitive about.
But he's not musically talented. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
Dash. It's
yeah.
just not your jam.
Yeah, he doesn't have arms. I don't know. Poor
Yeah.
guy.
I know. He probably had a headache.
Yeah, he probably did because he does play with his head, right?
Uh-huh.
He moves his head.
Yeah, it's like great.
Oh, Dash. So when it comes to, because you said you help teachers with this, and you could even send them this
Mhm.
podcast after it airs. This could be a resource for you. But what advice? So you've already had a lot of recommendations, but anything else we missed when it comes to writing grants for your classroom?
So one thing we talked about last time that I don't want to forget is we said storage containers.
Hmm.
So important. You don't think about it until all of your stuff arrives and you're like, what do I do with this? And I like when it comes to your glue, your tape, I don't care what brand you get, but
Hmm.
get the name brand
Yes.
containers for storage because they are being pulled off shelves daily, weekly, and they don't last. So try to get something that's sturdy, that fits things, label them, like
Yep.
make it as easy for yourself as you can. So that's my first advice. My second thing would definitely be get something that can use across multiple grade levels. I love that my Ozobots can be used with kindergarten and fifth grade, and it's different and you can make it challenging, whether you're doing Ozo Blockly, color coding, these Lego education kits, some of them can be used with K5. Definitely find things that can be used across many grade levels. Fewest amount of batteries, the better.
Mhm.
I have like this Fisher Price Codapillar that I think takes 5.
I think he
Um,
does.
and it is a ton. I love my robot mouse, but each one takes 3 AAA. So I would definitely say like batteries,
Mhm.
be cautious. Like Botley takes a ton of batteries and it's so hard keeping up with the batteries. So even, keep that in mind as you're ordering replacement parts.
Mhm.
Check into your replacement part policy. Like Snap Circuits, Osmo, they have the best replacement pieces. Like my students love Osmo. The pizza game's their favorite, but the board folds in half. Well, the board breaks in
Oh.
half a lot.
Hmm.
And I mean, I tape it back together, but they're also willing to just send you a new one. And a lot of things do that with education. Like Snap Circuits will send you replacement pieces. Lego is not one of those people, but I still love them.
I do too.
But some of the kits now come with the replacement parts. And when you get those, take those out first and you keep them. Don't put them in the box or they get mixed in. So
Mhm.
definitely like just find what works for you too and definitely research it. Like what works for someone else doesn't work for me. So
100%. Yes.
figure out what you need.
Mhm. And starting small is okay. Like
Yes.
it's okay if you only do $1,000 grant and you're
Yeah.
getting your feet wet. Like I know you're super ambitious and you're like, ooh, I'm going to get all this. But even small grants make a huge difference too. Like my first one was
Yes.
$1,000 and I was able to get stuff for video recording, which was awesome. And I got tripods and green screen stuff. So it doesn't even have to be over the top, just be very specific and you can always build up and there's more out there.
Yeah, our sixth grade, I'm helping them kind of start their STEM program. So last year, I got them one or not one, but a classroom set of like Spike Prime Essential.
Oh,
And then after that, we wrote, I think, a grant for like, it was like 5 or 600 just to get them some Spheros. And now this year, I helped them go big. And I think we went 8,800.
oh,
But I mean, it,
nice.
it definitely grew to that point of, start small and you'll get there. And even
Mhm.
my first year, like I would have been fine with $5,000. I was
Mhm.
thankful for what I had, but it definitely was, it made it so much more convenient to grow and reach out to your local people to help find what works for you. And, they'll help you.
Mhm. Oh yeah, a lot of businesses just don't know how to help. Like they want to, but they
Yeah.
don't know us. We don't know
Yes.
them. So the worst they can say is nothing or no. You never know
Yeah.
until you try. And a lot of times it's a tax write-off for these companies.
Yes.
And so they
And
want to help.
when in doubt, find someone on social media who's doing what you're doing and like doing the things you want to do and reach out and pick their brain. Like that has been social media between Twitter and Instagram. All those things have been like my biggest support system
Yeah.
in the past 4 years. Like I don't think I'd be where I would be without like conferences and just reaching out to people who are doing what I want to do and asking
Mhm.
them 1,012 questions. Like everyone's so supportive and welcoming and helpful. Like we want everyone to be successful in STEM.
Oh, 100%. And that's why you're here. That's why I asked you because you have a lot of knowledge on this and the whole purpose of this podcast and all of that kind of stuff. I totally agree with you. We're oftentimes an island in our positions and
Yeah.
so nice just to talk with other people who like understand what you're talking about and need help and need advice. And so we're just extending the walls of our classrooms
Yeah.
and connecting with each other, which is so good.
We remember what it was like to start. So let us help you make this transition easier.
Yeah. And grants are a good thing. Sometimes you
Yes.
just need that fancy stuff. You can do a lot with cardboard, but you do need some of that good
Yes.
high-end
To,
stuff
to
too.
really push your friends a little bit harder.
Yeah, there's a point where you definitely need all of that. But okay, so speaking of connecting, where can people, you mentioned at the beginning, but where can people find you and connect with you with everything that you're doing?
Yes, you can find me at Genosaurus Tech on probably Wakelet, Instagram, Twitter, probably LinkedIn. I'm everywhere, sharing, helping, all those things. Even though it says Genosaurus Tech, my name is Jennifer, but it's okay.
I love it. I'm so glad you can nail in that username everywhere. That's good.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much again for doing round two. I think it was just as good or even better as round one. No one will ever know because I don't have that recording. So, but thank you so much again. And I appreciate all of your knowledge and all the awesome things that you're doing with kids.
Thank you.